Blog Talk Radio.
Contra Radio Network, Preparedness Radio, with your host, John Jeffers.
All right, good evening, Wednesday night, here at the Contra Radio Network. Got a call from our good friend Brian down New Mexico way. Was it Monday? It was Monday he called me. Now, I don't know if he caught it, but I posted a story of a massive solar flare that was recorded, by whatever. They videotaped it, whatever. And I posted it, not realizing what the backstory was, because it wasn't mentioned until Brian called me. Now, Brian's going to call in, and he's going to explain himself, because when you hear what actually was afoot, if you will, it's going to get you thinking. Not meant to scare you, because as preppers, it might concern us, but does not scare us, and that's two different things entirely. Now, let me think. Do I have Brian's number? You know what? I may just call him. If you want to call in, our number is 516-453-9389. Juliet posted something I found very interesting. And hers was very similar to what I've said, is that since the election, people who are prepping have died off. They've gone away. The numbers, the listenership numbers here for CRN bear that out. One of her people that responded to her post was very, I see Robbie Z down Arkansas way has checked in. Hey, Bobby, it's good to see you join us tonight. Had admitted, he says, yeah, ever since Trump was elected, I've slacked off on my prepping and whatnot. And it got me thinking. And then I got this call from Brian. You know what? I'm going to call Brian, mainly because I'm not going to wait for him. So let me dig up his number from my zombie box here. I thought I had his number somewhere. Nope, let's check another one. I do have his number. He will not escape me. Let me give him a call right now. So let's see if I can get a hold of him, because he's not going to escape this and then sit there and bug out on me.
Hello, Brian speaking.
Hey, Brian, it's John.
Yes.
Hey, you're supposed to call in today.
Hello?
Brian, you're supposed to call in tonight.
Oh, I'm not home yet.
Well, too bad.
Let me call in. I'm not home yet. I'm still working.
Well, how long are you going to be working till?
Let me call in. I'll call in on the guest number, right?
All right, buddy.
Give me about 15 minutes and I'll be at my house. Can you stall for 15 minutes?
Yes, I can stall for 15 minutes. Goodbye.
Okay, stall for 15 minutes and I'll be there. Bye.
Bye-bye. And there you go. That's how that works. All right. For those of you that are listening in, if you want to tune in, to the live video feed of the show tonight. We're on the Contra Radio Network Facebook like page, not the group page, the like page. You can join in there. Join the chat if you will. Bobby Z is in. Always good to see Bobby. By the way, if you have any questions about horses, get a hold of Bobby Z. He's a big horse guy. He knows his stuff. He has a small plantation ranch down there in Arkansas, and he does a lot of stuff with horses. So if you got horse questions, he's the guy to ask. I've always thought that if you could have horses for your prepper group available, I would take a horse over a car any day, or a truck any day. I'll tell you why. Hey, Jim W's in there. Hey, Jim, welcome. And I'll tell you why. Because horses don't require gasoline. You may not be able to carry a lot, but you can carry enough for yourself and maybe some others. So when it comes right down to it, if I had my druthers, give me the horse. That's me, Mr. Vegas. That's what I'm talking about. All right. If you want to call in and opine, the number is 516-453-9389. We got Brian will be calling. I just talked to him. If you just missed the call, he's still working. He'll be out in about 15 minutes. He'll call in. But anyways, so I get this. You know what? So I get this thing, this phone call from Brian. He says, "Hey man," he says, "Do you know how close we were?" And I said, "From what? The sun? We're 93 million miles away. What? What do you mean how close we were?" And he says, "You saw that that I posted that video of the solar flare." I said, "Yeah, I saw it. It's all right." He goes, No, you're not getting it." I said, "Apparently not. It was a solar flare. Am I correct on that?" He goes, No. But he's got the numbers down for this. And the more he talked, the more I realized how important this show and other shows like this are. Needless to say, we were about 16 hours away from extremely bad juju hitting us and tearing us apart. I'm talking about tearing that thin veneer of civilization away. You want to know what that thin veneer is? It's electricity. As simple and as cheap as it is, it's what holds us and our civilization together. Imagine, if you will, if it all came down and there is no more electricity. It just stops. Somebody flips a switch. Think about it. Think about everything that your life is built on, is predicated upon, everything that in your life that depends upon the electrical supply. And then it's gone. Last week, we were 16 hours away from that exact scenario occurring. 16 hours. Did you hear anything about it? I would like to go back to that particular day last week and just take a look to see where our government officials were. Gary's joined us. Gary M. from Louisiana. He's joined us in the CRN video feed. So I would like to we're going to talk about this as soon as Brian calls in. 16 hours. 16 hours. I would like to know where some of our government officials were. Were they out of touch, incommunicado? Because you know what? Didn't hear anything about it on the media. Didn't hear FEMA say anything about it. Didn't hear anyone in charge of anything anywhere saying anything about it. And yet we're 16 hours away. That's slightly over half a day. Here, let's really put this into, perspective. Let's assume the clock starts running at 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. You go to bed and you wake up late, going, what the hell? Why did my alarm clock go off? Scott W. is in. Tim P. is in. Welcome, gentlemen. And you can't figure out what the hell happened. Oh, maybe the electricity's out. Okay. You probably figure it's just a local problem. Figure, okay. Make your way to the kitchen. Start some coffee. Nothing works. And all that precious time since 1 p.m., 2 p.m. the previous afternoon, the clock was running. And instead of saying anything to anyone, you let everybody go to bed, and all that precious time ticks away. And then it's here. 16 hours, guys and gals. 16 hours, and you would have been able to start putting your prepping plans into action. To see if it's really going to work. If the money and the time and the effort have paid off. We were all 16 hours away from that. So let me tell you something. The government has always put itself first. Because in their world, guess what? Everybody seems to, everybody in government service seems to think that government must continue for everything else to survive and work. That's just not true. But yet they have what they call continuity of government plans to ensure the government survives. The hell with the rest of you. After all government employees, they are, guess what? There are employees. And last week, I said I would love to be able to find out on that particular day where some of the top leaders were, what they were doing. Where are they? Because they sure as hell nobody's spouting the alarm, because you know what? They don't want to cause a panic. Really? So you're just let us all figure it out on our own, saying the citizens will endure. Power to the people, they will endure. Why should you have to endure? Why couldn't you just say something? Hey, look, there's a real problem coming at us here, and we may or may not get hit, but you need to know this. No, because you know why? Because we're the government. We know what's best for you. Now, Tim says, whatever you do, as little or as much, it will pay off to the degree that you put into it. Well, maybe. That might be true. But what if you're just starting out prepping? Or better yet, what if since November you decided, I don't have to prep anymore. Donald Trump is president. Everything's good. You better tell that to the sun. Because the sun has a whole different version of events. And the sun doesn't care who's president or what's going on. It's going to do what it's going to do. And there's no stopping it. There's no hiding from it. That's all. I'm just telling you. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you want to call in, I want to hear from you. Please. Number is 516-453-9389. Now, how many of you are familiar with an incident called the Carrington event? If memory serves, and Sometimes it fails me as I get older. Bobby Z can relate to that, I'm sure. One of the things that we can tell you is this. The Carrington event happened, I believe, in 1854. So there wasn't much of a large electrical grid in the world at that point. 1859. Thank you, Tim. And it wasn't much of an electrical grid around the world. It was, electricity distribution was still in its infancy. It was, for those countries that could afford it, they did it. However, the Carrington event did wipe out some of the electric grid. Rob A is in. Tim P has just posted a, link of the solar storm of 1859. Now, I don't have the numbers for it offhand. Brian does. And if I remember what he told me on Monday, this event that we were 16 hours away from was, if you have the Carrington event here, this event would be up here. That's how big it was. That's right, Gary. Keep on prepping. My point is this. If you think, for those of you out there, and believe me, there are people out there that believe wholeheartedly with their whole heart, mind, the government will take care of you. The government has your best interest at heart. I think that's a very naive point of view. However, if you are that persuasion, I ask you to listen to this carefully when Brian calls, and then at least reevaluate your philosophy on this matter. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm asking you to reevaluate your philosophy on this. And once you do, and if you come to the correct conclusion, you'll see why we preppers think about these things. We worry about these things. We talk about these things. We prep for these various scenarios, events, incidents, critical events, and critical incidents that will, can, or might befall us. Gary says, no, they won't. Maybe they won't, Gary. I don't know. Look, one thing we're waiting for Brian to call in. Let me say something to you. You go to Facebook, you see all the political, nasty discussions going on, right? You get the lefties and the conservatives battling. And what they don't realize is when it's all said and done, guess what? No one has changed anyone's mind. The only way you can change someone's mind is, well, you can't. Only that person could do it if they're willing to reevaluate their philosophy. And that's the bottom line. That's why a lot of times I will not get into this tit-for-tat crap on the Facebook political, because you know what? I know I'm not going to change anybody's mind. I don't care how right I am, how much the facts are on my side. If the other side is not willing to reevaluate their own beliefs and philosophies, why bother? If those people that believe the government is the end-all and be-all, or do we say be-all, end-all, then fine. Let them live that. Because if we're right, and as a prepper I believe I'm correct, I believe that my audience, is absolutely have the correct philosophy, then they will have to live with their choices. Now, what those choices might be, I wouldn't want those choices. I know that. I don't want it to live like the people in Venezuela do today, with the grid up and they're fighting for their political freedoms. People are dying. People are starving. There's no money. But that's the socialist paradise that some people want for this country. So my point is this, guys. Don't get into the political arguments with people. Don't get into the merits of prepping or not prepping. If they can't see it for themselves, let them go. because eventually they and they alone have to live with their decisions of what they do or don't do. Now, Tim puts on, so he says, about the Northern Lights during the Carrington event, people in the northeastern United States could read a newspaper by the aurora's light. That's how strong it was. Now, if we can get Brian in here, where's Brian? Here's Brian. All right. Brian, you there, buddy?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Fire away. I got the people somewhat primed. Let's tell them about...
All right, sorry I'm a little late.
Yeah. You'll be punished later, sir.
Yeah. If I could convince work to stop making me work and still pay me, I'd be okay.
That's called a pension, sir. Now, I got
good luck with that. They won't have those around when I retire.
You know what? Yeah, don't be so sure. You know, I got the people...
$200 trillion in derivatives is what the world owes. Unfunded pensions and things.
Not my problem.
But anyway, sorry.
Well, we're talking...
Back on track.
Back on track. I was told that you called me Monday, and you had talked about the post you made. I said, yeah, I saw it. It's pretty cool. And you said, no, man, you don't get it. I said, get what? What are you talking about? And I explained to him that we were 16 hours away from really testing our prepping plans for real.
Yeah, the solar storm that happened on the 24th was 16 hours away from actually being aimed at Earth. And now they downgraded that a little bit. When they first released it, they were saying that it could have been as strong as the Carrington event, but then they downgraded it to a mid-grade M, which is still a very powerful solar storm, which would have caused, theoretically, it could have caused blackouts and things like that, communication disruptions and things like that. The average time, and this is what the government is not going to tell you, hey, 16 hours, in 16 hours, we're going to get hit by a solar flare. And I'm sorry, it's going to shoot a solar flare at us, and it's going to take anywhere from 48 hours to 200 hours, but the average is about 96 hours to get here. So they're not going to say anything. The only places you're going to hear that kind of stuff is from like solar observatories and things like that are broadcasting. Suspicious Observer is a good website, good YouTube site. He has a whole lot of information about that, but
so 4 days.
There have been 3 solar... I'm sorry, go ahead.
So average is 4 days, from the time of the flare to the time of arrival.
96 hours, yes, sir. Yep, from the time of the flare. The first particles of the solar storm will actually hit in about 8 minutes. But the damaging parts of it, the first parts will start disrupting things in about 8 minutes. That's your first particles when they arrive. The actual part that'll really take down our stuff will hit... and it usually it's anywhere from 48 to 200 with an average of 96 hours. The bigger they are, the more powerful they are, the faster they get here. So it's not unheard of to be arriving in 48 hours. In April of this year, there was 3. That's awesome. Thundering outside. There was 3 CMEs back to back. That had they hit us, it would have been 3 X-class flares that would have hit us back to back over the course of about a 36-hour period. So once the first one hit, once it was done, the next one was going to hit. And so, that would have been devastating. And surprisingly enough, very few people talk about this stuff. You don't hear about it on MSNBC or CNN. However, there are some news stations that are starting to cover it. So it's starting to get out there.
My concern when I was talking with you is that, 16 hours, nobody in charge of anything, anywhere said, boo.
Right.
They were just going to let
you wouldn't have heard anything.
Nothing.
And that's just it. That's what I was saying when I was on the phone with you, is that they're not going to call you on the radio, and they're not going to talk to you on the radio, and they're not going to talk to you on the news and say, hey, in 24 hours, we're going to get hit by this horrible, massive solar flare that's going to take out everything in life as we know it's going to end, because, well, then you're going to be panicking and you're going to be in the way of them escaping.
Right.
wherever they think they may escape to.
Right. And that's that's one thing I was talking to. I said I would like to get the agenda to find out where the particular leaders are or were and what they were doing at that particular day and time. I'd like to know how many were actually still in Washington or decided they were going to disappear, go incommunicado for a while.
Yeah, and then you look at that and you're like, people don't talk about solar flares as much as they should, because there's been 3 large flares that have come out of the sun this year. One in May, one in April, one in May. Sorry, 3 in April, 1 in May, and then this one in July. That all of them, if they'd been aimed towards Earth, would have been devastating. To some extent or another.
And I was telling them, I said,
so
this thin veneer of civilization.
What my concern was when I called you was like, how many people actually are Suspicious Observer? Here's a perfect example. Suspicious Observer is a very laid-back website. I'm sure I know you've been there, John. And when you listen to his podcast, he's very laid back. He's down to earth. He doesn't talk about anything. He came out and said that had this EMP or the solar flare that happened last week on the 24th, had it been aimed towards Earth, he would have recommended that people stock up on food. And that says something right there, because that tells you how, what he thinks that would have done. And that literally missed us by like 16 hours. 16 hours later, if it had been pointed towards Earth, it would have been aimed right at Earth. So,
and yet nobody said anything.
Sorry, go ahead.
Chuck, are you there?
I am.
You want to add something?
Yeah, it seems to me that having like some small Faraday cage in your home would be an important thing to have, and to use it around the clock all year round, just to put your devices in there like overnight or something like that, or even during the day, stuff that you're not using. Including short radios, two-way radios and transceivers and so on and so forth. It seems to be the common sense thing to do. That pretty much ranks up there with homeowners owning a portable gas generator. You know what I mean?
I don't think it was
just throwing it out there that a stainless steel trash can at Wally World is like $27, and a roll of stainless roll of the HVAC tape, the aluminum tape, is like $9. So for like $40 and some anti-static matting and maybe some other stuff on the inside you might want to put in there. Even if you spend $60, you can put everything. There's a lot of room inside one of them trash cans. I have one.
What good does it do you?
That would work as well, as long as you have a rubber mat or something like that to separate your electronics.
Anti-static mat inside it.
Yeah, but what's that going to do?
Right,
it will do you no good if it brings down the electric grid, because no one will be broadcasting or anything else.
No, you don't put your radio in there. No. I have 3 inverters, 6 charge controllers, a spare laptop, 2 hard drives full of homesteading and prepping stuff that I've gotten off YouTube and various other sites. No, you don't put stuff in there for like communications. I mean, you can put like a Bofang in there, like a shortwave radio, but that's not what I have in there. I have stuff in there that's going to help me survive after something like this happens. And I have multiples because, even if it's a bottom of the line 1500 watt Cobra inverter for like $60, I mean, that's better than nothing. And, after something like this happens, you don't want just one, because, well, what happens like that one in April where there was 3 back you go up there, the storm comes through, you don't know there's another one coming.
Right.
Because, well, there's no longer anybody broadcasting that information. So I have 3 inverters and 6 charge controllers. That's enough to replace everything on my system 3 times. So,
well, that's
something
fine,
happens
but I think
4 times,
for the common person, though, for the common person, it might not apply to you, given that you're in a different situation. You're pretty much off grid already as is. But for the common homeowner who has electronics still packed away somewhere in a box or in a storage space that's not being used, I have several. Yeah, I think having a pet cage or something to use as a Faraday cage might be a good thing to have. It's one of those insurance policies, like having a power generator. Again, it pretty much ranks up there as
Right. But
important
even if
thing
you
to
don't
have.
have, even if you're not living off grid right now, say you're just bobbed down the street and not living off grid, so go buy yourself a solar panel or two, because 99% of the time, according to everything I've read, solar panels are not affected by solar flares. Everything that they connect to is, but the batteries and the
Including
solar
solar
panels are not.
recharge controllers. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So the charge controller and the inverter, they're affected by it, but the solar panels and the batteries are not. So go buy yourself a solar panel or two solar panels. For $100, you can get a 200-watt solar panel. $140 or so, you can get a 200-watt solar panel. It's not that much to buy a 10-amp charge controller. Even if all you have after the end of everything as you know it is a couple of LED lights and a fan to keep some airflow going around, that's going to keep your morale up a whole lot better. And I have a rule of threes that I have altered from the normal rule of threes, and that is 3 seconds without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and 3 months without hope. Because after 3 months, you will literally just die. Like, people who have lost hope completely, they don't hang around long. Their body just shuts down on them. So if you can't keep your morale up enough to keep yourself going, then you're going to have a whole bunch of other issues anyway. So think of it more along the lines of, perfect example, with 2 solar panels, 240-watt solar panels, 280 watts, and 3 car batteries. You can run a hot plate. You can only run it once a day, and that's about all you can run. You can run a couple of LED lights, but you can run a hot plate off that, and your panels will recharge it. You can run that hot plate for about 15 minutes. So if the end of the world, as everyone knows, it happens, how much happier are you going to be with a hot meal once a day? Or sanitized water because you boiled it? It's the little things like that that makes a difference. You don't have to be completely off grid in order to. What I'm getting at is do something, do anything. Doing nothing gets you nowhere.
All right, here you go.
So
here you go. This is posted by Tim.
Sorry.
On July 23rd, 2012, a Carrington-class super solar storm was observed. Its trajectory missed Earth in orbit. Now, information about these observations was first shared publicly by NASA on April 28th, 2014, nearly 2 years after the fact.
Yep.
Which goes to show you
and that one
they're
actually,
not going to tell you
it actually
anything.
hit close enough that it took out some of our satellites.
True.
On the outer satellites, it took out some of our outer satellites. That's how close it was to us.
And it's my point is this, and it's what Brian has already said. They're not going to tell you. You will wake up and you will get a chance to prove whether or not your prepping plans were correct, lacking, or right on, or just spot on. Do not think the government has your best interest at heart. It only has its own interest at heart. You will have to endure because they're not going to tell you what's coming. Hell, they sat on this information I just told you for nearly 2 years. Why? Why? And Brian said it. Because they don't want you to get in their way of whatever safe spot they think they're going to go to. Now, granted, look, a CME is not going to always, destroy all life on Earth. It can interrupt it. It could make it somewhat hard. It could change the way you think, what's going on. So,
if you think about, let me interject something real quick.
Go ahead.
If you look at this, okay, a lot of people don't think about this as far as like, okay, so the grid goes down. Well, how long will your medications last if they're not refrigerated? Wait, how are you going to get new medications when your medications run out? How are you going to have sanitized water because the water plant stops working? Wait, how are you going to get rid of your poo because, well, the water plant stops working? So all water, incoming and outgoing, stops. How are you going to get food? Are you going to go down and rob the local store? Are you going to rob your neighbor next? There's a lot of things that people don't think about that are, if an EMP happened and you get a cut on your finger and it gets infected, you can die from it. if you don't have antibiotics to heal that simple infection from a cut on your finger.
Which I talked
How
about
many times have you had a
last
cut on your
Sunday.
finger and you put triple antibiotic ointment on because it's starting to get a little red? You know, it's things like that that people don't think about, the repercussions of a massive solar storm.
Right.
So I'm all fired up this week.
You know, Rob and Tim both said the same thing. If there comes a time when the media cannot find any politicians, because we all know they're all media whores anyways. If they can't find anybody, that's a clue. It's a clue something bad is about to occur or has occurred. We just haven't heard about it. That's a clue, my listeners. Make no mistake.
And on a side note, do you know where I heard about this solar flare when it first happened?
Where?
Solar Observer has a app that costs $2.99.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's an event like this,
Yeah.
he broadcasts an alert on there immediately. So I got notified of this solar storm, even though it was headed the other direction. I got notified of it when it was happening. And it's $2.99. It's a real good app. It's Suspicious Observers. Just go to his YouTube page and you can find he links to his app in there. But it's worth it, $2.99. Because he's given a couple of warnings on there.
That's why we have you,
For
Brian,
solar events.
posted on the CRN
What's that?
page. That's why we have you to post on the CRN page, man.
Well, I
It
usually
does-
tag you in that
it-
stuff when I get it, because when I go to try to post on the CRM page, I can't ever get it to post.
What?
It does raise a
Yeah,
valid
it does.
concern, though, that for storm and meteorological events, you know, the news and Weather Channel will be all over that. But you know, ideally, I think solar events, which somehow has an impact on the weather as well, should be included in that. But for some reason, it doesn't look like solar events are even included at all, and are not highly reported on a minute-by-minute basis like a thunderstorm or a snowstorm or tornadoes are. So, yeah, I think that's definitely an area of vulnerability that should be addressed, though. But since that's not being addressed by the government, or for that matter, by the Weather Network, the only thing that we can do as civilians, as individuals, is to basically take the necessary steps that you need in order to get as much of an advance warning as possible. And it seems to me Brian seems to have an app for that, and it also, I think it's a good idea to share it too. So, what's that called? Solar Event app or something like that, Brian?
No, it's Suspicious Observer. He has a YouTube. It's a guy. He has a YouTube page, and he developed the Suspicious Observer app. Basically, he posts a 5-minute video every morning discussing what they're expecting out of the sun every day, and he's been doing this for years. So, but nobody talks about it, and
Of course
And
not.
I found it simply because I was looking for solar flares, and I saw something with his name on it, and I was like, that's an interesting name. So I went and read it, and I started reading his article, and one thing led to another. And then I guess about 3 months ago, he came out with this app, maybe a little bit less. But, I mean, it's got some bugs because it's a brand new app. But, you know, so far, every major solar storm has happened in the last, I guess it's probably 2.5 or 3 months. He's had on there. So it may have had a little longer, but yeah. So
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Interesting.
Suspicious Observer.
Hold on. Dum da dum da dum da dum. I'm trying to figure out where. Oh man, there's so many. I don't even know where to start with it. Here, I'll just do it here.
The Disaster Prediction app by Ben Davidson.
I can't understand you.
Yeah, Disaster Prediction app. That's it. Has what looks like the Earth. The picture of it has what looks like the Earth and the magnetic shield around the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Disaster. What's it called? Disaster Prediction app. Yep. So something else to think about. And this is something nobody's talking about.
What's that?
There's going to be a complete and total solar eclipse in August, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you know where the full eclipse is going to happen at?
What do you mean? What do you mean the full? You mean totality?
Right. Right. Do you know whereabouts in the world it's gonna be completely and totally fully eclipsed?
Yeah, so there's a 110 kilometer strip going from the northwest United States
Right through
to
the
southeast.
Midwest.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, right near Yellowstone, right?
Yeah.
So what happens when the what happens when the moon interrupts the gravitational pull of the sun on Earth?
Tidally,
And then it comes back 2 minutes later, because when there's a total solar eclipse, the moon blocks that gravitational pull for a second,
Yeah.
for longer than a second, but
Yeah,
for a
but
few seconds.
The moon also has
So
its
if there's
own
going to be a
gravitational
complete
pull.
total, what's that?
The moon has its own gravitational pull.
Right. So ultimately, if you ever look at Earth, it looks kind of almost like an egg, not quite as egg
Right.
shaped, but
No,
it's
I
kind of
gotcha.
stretched out,
Right.
and that's from gravity. So when the moon gets between the sun, which is pulling on Earth anyway, and Earth, that gravity is going to stop. It's not going to stop completely, but it's going to diminish slightly, and even slightly, with Yellowstone having what 1,200 earthquakes in the last 3 months. Something to think about.
Sounds like we could be looking at a possible event with the magnetic, the core and the magnetic poles as well. I'm not sure if it's going to equate to like a alignment, but yeah, there might be some potential for some weird shit to happen during the solar eclipse. I'm thinking. I mean,
That and all the whack jobs come out.
Oh, whack jobs are constant. You know, I would expect them to be at their worst during a full moon, let alone a solar eclipse. But I think this app is a good thing to have, definitely. But yeah,
it doesn't. His app doesn't give you a ton of information, but when you look at like the alert section, it says July 22nd, coronal hole indicates an increased chance of M6 plus earthquakes. July 22nd, geomagnetic storm is taking place, 4:34 a.m. I heard that alert go off, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So
how much of
then you go back
advance warning do you get with that app, though? How much of an advance warning do you get with that app, though? Only as it happens, or
he listed it on the 22nd at 4:34 a.m. The solar event took place on the 22nd at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So about 2.5 hours later, he was broadcasting it.
Okay, interesting.
So he's same day. If it were to happen at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you may even get a quicker response time because he monitors all this stuff all day long. So I mean, it's a real quick response time. There's not a lot of information. You have to go look that up after you get the alert. But I mean, like July 16th, geomagnetic storm is taking place. July 13th, strong solar flare and Earth-facing CME eruption in progress, which actually happened, but it missed Earth. So
how much did it miss Earth by?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do they know how many miles it missed Earth by, or is it just by time?
You know, I haven't actually looked that one up. I remember reading an article about 45 minutes later from NASA's solar. NASA actually has, most people don't know this either, NASA actually has a solar weather website that's free, and they update it. It's called, hold on, NASA Solar. It's called the NWS Space Weather Prediction Center. And it's from NOAA. I'm sorry, it's not NASA. It's NOAA.gov.
Yeah, so it's NOAA.
It's www.swp.noaa.gov. So, and I went on there and read about it, and they said that it was going to miss Earth. So, I followed up with it later that afternoon, and I followed up with it the next morning to make sure they didn't change their outlook. And I followed up as well with Suspicious Observer's YouTube page and spaceweather.com or whatever that other one is. And they all said the same thing. So, but it gives you the ability to actually pay attention. So say it's a fast-moving storm, it's going to hit in 48 hours. If I spend 24 hours making sure it's actually going to hit, I can call my boss and say, hey, boss, I've got a family emergency. I'm not going to be in tomorrow. Roll my happy butt right up to my property. Make sure all my stuff's locked down. I still got 24 hours. So, you know, the alternative is waiting for the news to come on and say, hey,
And they never
the
will.
world's going to end tomorrow, because that's going to happen.
They will never do that.
You'll just wake up
Well,
one day and there won't be any lights.
We'll wake up,
if,
won't be no
if
electricity.
we try to,
nothing.
if we choose to look at things like optimistically, the good thing about the moon being between the Earth and the Sun is that if there's any solar flares headed in our direction, the moon will effectively block it. But
Well, I'm
the
not
cost
worried
will
about
be-
solar
the
flares
co-
with that, but the gravity, I think, is
Yeah,
going to be
I
an
know.
issue.
The gravity is going to be an issue, and I think compasses are going to be impacted as well if you're still relying on the magnetic poles for navigation. But GPSs, that I'm not entirely sure about. To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure if this is going to affect. If we're talking about gravitational fluctuations here, which is what the moon is
Right.
responsible for the tides and so on and so forth. So. We have no idea what kind of effects it's going to have. So I guess the only thing I could recommend for everyone who's not in the know, but have the same concerns as I do, is to be as vigilant as possible and alert on what's happening. And if you see something weird happening around your area, you may want to come up with a plan B. So just be alert. That's really the only there. And honestly, there's no replacement. There's no better defense than vigilance. So,
And something else to throw out there is, this is something that I've been preaching since I was doing my show, which one of these days I might get back to if I ever A, stop having to work, and B, stop having to deal with doctors, but we won't get into that. Or stop having to work like 90 hours a week. But anyway, and that is that now is the time to go buy a small piece of property. Even if all you buy is a half an acre lot in the middle of the country, and throw a shed on it. All right. If you don't have that, and you don't have that ability of someplace to go, what good is a bug out bag? What are you going to bug out to? The woods? So that's fine. What happens when it's, I don't know, minus 10 degrees outside, and you're living in your tent, and it snows 36 inches? Where are you going to live at then? So these are all things that you need to take into consideration. Your priorities should be, go buy a small piece of property. You can go out, and there are hundreds, and literally hundreds of companies out there in America that with $50 or $60 down will finance, no questions asked, a piece of property for like $99 a month. And some of them I've seen as low as like $69 a month. You know, so don't go to McDonald's that week, once a week, and then there you've covered the cost of your land for the month. You know, go buy yourself an acre or two in the middle of nowhere. You know, just make sure that it's close enough that in the event of an absolute catastrophic emergency, you could walk to it. Mine is on the outside stretch of that. I'd have a 7-day walk. That's quite a walk. But, and maybe closer to 8 if the kids have to use the bathroom like they do when we're driving. Anybody there?
I'm trying to take all the information and process it here.
So, but no, I mean, to me, the most important thing is getting a piece of property. Because if you don't have a piece of property and you don't have a way to shelter yourself from the elements, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You know, you're wasting money on a bug out bag, and you're wasting money on water purification tablets and all this other stuff because you're going to die from exposure to the elements anyway. So I know that's a horrible thing to say, and that's a really pessimistic way to look at it, but look at the real world. I mean, think about it. What are you going to do when it's minus 10 degrees, there's 3 feet of snow on the ground, and you have a tent or a tarp with a sleeping bag? You know?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if this event happens in December? You know, what are you going to bug out to your house? Okay. So what happens in 2 weeks when there's no power and there's no sanitation, and oh wait, people are pooping in the streets and peeing in the streets, and there's dead bodies in the streets, and there's massive bacteria, massive diseases popping back up? You know, you don't want to be in a city. That is not where you want to be at in that kind of event. Sorry, I'll stop ranting.
Yeah, there are small things that the average consumer can do in order to just, be prepared or have a little bit more preparedness than the average American would normally have. Again, I'll cite the power generator, the gas power generator, for starters. It's something. It's no different from having an insurance policy and you're paying money on the policy, but what you're actually doing is getting extra equipment in the event that you need it, even though you hope not to have a need to use it. Amongst the items in that category would definitely be a gas power generator, maybe a doggy cage or a pet cage that can also be repurposed as a Faraday cage, extra batteries, even extra car batteries and inverters, so you can use it as alternative power supply with a solar recharger. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's just
no, and that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to get at is that you should be focusing on more long term than short term. Okay, if the power goes out for a week, that's fine. But what happens if a solar storm takes out the grid and we're down for 10 years? You have to have some kind of a backup, even if all your backup is going to find, and this is something that I looked into before I bought property. There are a whole lot of ghost towns all over the country. A lot more so now because the economy is collapsing in quite a few of them, and some of the towns have just vacated. It wouldn't be that difficult to go out and find an old cabin in the Midwest or, that's abandoned that you could convert. I mean, when I drove over the Rocky Mountains in Montana, I could see probably a dozen abandoned log cabins from the road. So I'm sure there's a lot more that aren't visible from the interstate that are out there that you could go and just go hike. If you don't have the cash to buy a piece of property, go hiking. It's relatively inexpensive to go hiking. And when you go hiking, you can take your time, look around. Something else to think about, water. How are you going to get water in the event of something like this? Well, perfect example. When you drive down the road and you see those windmills, the windmills for wells that are like the old style.
Yeah.
Every single one of those has a cattle trough full of water. It's also full of bacteria and everything else, but that's where your life straw comes in. But think about that. When you're driving to work, look around and look for these things. Look and see where these if you live in town and you work in town, that's different. But if you live outside of town and you work in town, look for these things. Look for places that you can stop at to get water. There's going to be water there because those don't have any electricity draw on them. That's all mechanical. So
I think I agree with what Brian trying, and he's stressing more on the long term, and that's also important. The common American are not preppers, and they don't have anything for short term, let alone long term, except maybe the 3 days worth of groceries that they get every week, the paycheck. So I would like to just simply say, not to contradict anything that Brian says, because everything he's saying is completely valid and I agree with. But for the common American who's not a prepper, they have to start prepping at least for the short term, and then once they get they're into that routine, then eventually they might be able to focus on the long term. But to not do anything at all for short term and long term means that you become a victim, and that's the number one thing Americans should not be.
Oh, but we got lots of
and you should be prepared. You should be prepared for a 2 or 3 day power outage anyway, no matter where you're at, because that can happen from thunderstorms, that can happen from tornadoes, hurricanes. I mean, that's standard stuff that everybody should be prepared for. Most of the people that listen to John, they're past that beginning stage. I understand what you're saying, Chuck. I mean, that is a good point. And people who have never done any prepping, if they're listening to this, then yes, by all means, go out and do some research. Don't jump headfirst into it with fear. That is the worst thing you can do. Read everything that's out there, and then stop and take a minute, take a big breath, and realize that nothing is going to happen today that is going to change what you've already prepared for. So if you've done zero preparations, then nothing is going to happen today that's going to change that. So what you need to do then is you need to stop and you need to put together a list. Lists are so important. I can't stress them enough. You need to put together a list, and you need to prioritize. You need to go down that list, and you need to list every single possible thing that you might think that you might need. And then you need to look at that list, put a price tag next to everything, and before you freak out because there's $20,000 in stuff there, you need to prioritize it. You don't really need, a four-wheel drive RV right from the get-go. It'd be nice for a bug-out vehicle, but you don't really need that. You need a life straw because that's going to get you water. You need the basics. Right. And yes, a get-home bag is super important. A bug-out bag, to me, is not as important as getting someplace to bug out to. Because if I have a bug-out bag, whoa, look at this bug-out bag. I got everything in it. Where are you going to bug out to?
Right.
I don't know.
Even for me, I have bug-out bag. That's not even packed right now. You know what I mean? I got bags I can use for bug-out bags. Do I have a completely full and equipped bag in my car that I take with me every day that I go to work? No. That's something I'm going to have to fix. So even for a prepper who has all the stuff at home already, extra food and provisions and medicines and so on and so forth, they can still be vulnerable if they don't have a bug-out bag already packed with essentials that you would need. So, and it's the things that we don't think about usually is what we need the most.
All right, guys.
When the time
I'm almost about out of time, guys. So quickly, final words. Chuck, go. Final words, quickly.
Prep today, survive tomorrow.
I thought it was prep today to live tomorrow.
Or prep today to live tomorrow. Okay. I stand corrected.
Fair enough.
Have
a good one, buddy. Thanks for calling in tonight. Mr. Brian, you're up.
Yes, sir. I'd just like to say that, if all you do is go out and buy one can of tuna fish today, you're better off than you were yesterday. Get your prep started now. Now is the time to prep, not the day after a critical event.
Right.
The time to prep is now.
Right.
So get started and listen to what I said. Go check out those websites. They're all free to go to their websites.
Yeah.
The app's $2.99. The websites are all free. So go inform yourself, learn.
There it is. Brian, thanks, but I'm going to let you fly, man, because I know you're probably want to sit down and get something to eat and whatnot. So I'll give you a call.
Yep,
I'll give you a call.
I'd like to do a follow-up on this maybe in a week or so if you're okay with that.
Yep, sure. Next Wednesday?
Yeah, that sounds well. Can we do it Sunday? Because I'm more likely to be able to hit a Sunday.
Okay, we can do it Sunday. That will be fine. We'll do that.
Okay. You want to do it this Sunday or next Sunday?
This Sunday is fine.
Okay. All right, I'll call in this Sunday.
All right, my friend. Thank you for calling in.
All right, boss. It's been good talking to you. Everybody take care and God bless.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Good night. All right. And that will just about do it here for myself here at the Contra Radio Network. Just remember, kind of the things that Brian was talking about. And the reality is the government ain't going to tell you
90 seconds.
So they're not going to tell you what's going to happen. You got to keep yourself informed. So until I'll be back here Sunday with Brian again, and then Friday Contra Dawn show for you political junkies out there. You want to rock and roll? Get in the pit with Contra Dawn. 9:00 Central. She'll be rocking and rolling. And then Saturday night, of course, is Julie with Ladies of the Watch.
60 seconds.
So for myself, here at the Contra Radio Network, I say this to all my prepper and patriot friends. Let's say it together, shall we? Be safe, be alert, and be vigilant. I'm John Jeffers here at the Contra Radio Network, thanking you for joining me tonight. We'll see you soon. We'll talk to you again real soon. Good night.